The Preston Wyatt Holiday Gala wasn't a family gathering so much as a polished exhibition of status, an evening wrapped in crystal, champagne, ego, and the occasional backhanded compliment. My Aunt Marjorie's Charleston estate, with its marble floors and sweeping staircase, glittered like a showroom meant to impress strangers rather than welcome relatives. Laughter echoed from room to room, but it was the heavy, glittering kind, the type that smothered sincerity under layers of designer perfume. I stood near the dessert table, quietly sipping a club soda from a vintage coupe glass. Around me, trays of miniature tarts and chocolate truffles were arranged like precious artifacts. It was the safest place to stand, neutral territory, away from the bar, away from the bragging, away from Jared. But of course, Jared Preston had a gravitational pull stronger than the chandelier hanging above him. He stood near the grand piano, surrounded by a devoted cluster of family members who nodded along as he delivered his latest report on corporate conquest. His suit was tailored, his cuff links gleamed, and his confidence radiated outward with the precision of a spotlight. "So close," he was saying, swirling his bourbon like a movie villain who practiced dramatic gestures. "Once Stratos Corp finalizes their merger with Alder Technologies, I'll be overseeing the entire Southeastern Division. It's the most competitive region, but I'm ready for it." Ready, sure. Jared was always ready to brag. The aunts and uncles feasted on every word. My Aunt Marjorie's face was glowing with pride, just as it had when he'd won high school debate, interned in D.C., or claimed some award she could hardly pronounce. Then came the familiar ambush. "So, Celine," Uncle Mark said, turning to me with faux curiosity coated in saccharine sweetness. "Still running that tiny little consultancy of yours?" I held his gaze, forcing myself not to react. "Not yet." "Yes," I said simply. "Still running my firm." Jared snorted loudly enough for half the room to hear. "Paragon Strategies, right? Still doing brand makeovers for small-town bakeries. How many people on staff now? 5? 6? I didn't answer. Not because I was intimidated, but because the truth was sitting quietly in my inbox at home. 3 acquisition agreements, a full integration plan, and a final contract that would render all his assumptions irrelevant. Let them talk. Let them think Paragon was nothing but a boutique agency run by an eccentric cousin who had abandoned corporate life. "Look," Jared said, adjusting his cuff links. "If you ever want something stable, I could talk to the VP of Alder. Maybe get you into a real role. Something steady. You're what, mid-30s now? You should think about stability." My mother forced a brittle smile. "Oh, Jared, that's so generous of you." "Generous? But..." I tightened my grip on my glass just enough to keep myself grounded. Because the truth. Tomorrow morning, Paragon Strategies wasn't just going to partner with Alder Digital. We were acquiring it. Quietly. Strategically. Completely. Jared, who was bragging about leading the Southeast Division, would soon be reporting to a company he didn't even realize was already under my umbrella. I sipped my club soda and let Jared ramble on about restructuring teams and revolutionizing market strategies. He had memorized all the buzzwords, but none of the substance. The room ate it up. Meanwhile, I stayed silent. After all, nothing rattles the prideful more than a truth revealed at the perfect moment. And that moment walked through the front door right on cue. Because when Alder CEO arrived, looking for me, not Jared, the entire room learned how violently assumptions can shatter. The doorbell rang at precisely 8:30 p.m., slicing cleanly through the hum of clinking glasses, laughter, and orchestral holiday music. Conversations paused. The room straightened, as if preparing itself for an arrival of significance. Even Jared's voice, loud enough moments earlier to fill the entire parlor, faded mid-sentence. Aunt Marjorie smoothed her sequin dress. "That must be him," she whispered with a reverence usually reserved for royalty. The CEO of Alder Digital. The man Jared had been name-dropping all evening. Jared inhaled deeply, rolling his shoulders back like an actor hitting his mark. "All right, everyone," he said grandly, waving his hand for calm. "Keep it classy. Michael Luo is practically family at this point. After the merger, we'll be working hand in hand. He flashed a smile so wide it looked painful. The foyer doors swung open. And there he stood, Michael Luo himself. Dignified, silver-haired, tailored overcoat folded neatly over one arm. He surveyed the room with crisp, attentive eyes. Every Preston relative practically vibrated with excitement. But instead of heading toward Jared, who was already stepping forward with his arm extended, Michael scanned the room, then locked eyes with me. His expression softened into a warm, genuine smile. "Miss Vale," he said, my last name echoing in the now silent parlor. "Thank you for inviting me. I wanted to personally express my gratitude for the smooth transition. Your integration plan has been exceptional." Conversation collapsed around us. A hush rippled so fast it felt like the room inhaled as one. Jared froze mid-step, arm half extended, confusion contorting his face. "Sir, you know my cousin?" Michael looked at him as though the question was odd. "Of course. Celine Vale is the reason Alder is moving forward with confidence. She's the architect of the acquisition structure." Dead silence. You could feel the weight of reality drop like a cement block onto the marble floor. Finally, Jared found his voice, thin and cracking. That can't be right. She runs a tiny strategy firm. Marketing. For small businesses. Celine doesn't, she couldn't, she can't be the majority stakeholder. I supplied gently. Actually, she can. I set my coupe glass down on the mantel with deliberate calm. Paragon Strategies, I continued, isn't a boutique marketing firm. We're an international acquisitions and restructuring company. And as of yesterday evening, we finalized our controlling interest in Alder Digital. Someone dropped a cookie tray. Someone else let out a muffled gasp. My aunt grabbed my uncle's arm as though steadying herself from a sudden earthquake. Jared looked like the floor had tilted beneath him. "You bought Alder," he whispered. "But my division, my promotion, will be evaluated," I said smoothly. "Post-acquisition reviews are standard. You know that." Michael gave a polite nod. In fact, Miss Vale's team demonstrated the most sophisticated tactical leverage I've ever seen. The timing of this acquisition was masterful. The words hit Jared harder than any physical blow could have. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again like a malfunctioning machine. "But all those years," he stammered. "You were what? Pretending. Keeping this from us." "No," I said calmly. "I was building. You were assuming." The room was suffocatingly quiet now. Every eye locked on me, every smug smile erased, every whispered doubt evaporated. "Celine," Aunt Marjorie whispered, voice trembling. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" I gave her a faint, almost sympathetic smile. "Because none of you ever asked. You only asked if I was stable, not if I was successful." A wave of whispers surged through the crowd, sweeping back and forth like a tide turning. Jared's face had gone sheet white. His bravado had evaporated. All that remained was panic. "Celine, we need to talk," he said in a faint, shaken voice. He nodded. "Yes, Jared. We do." Because when Jared dragged me into the hallway, desperate, trembling and furious, the truth he demanded would break him more than the acquisition ever could. Jared practically stumbled into the hallway, gripping my arm with more force than necessary. The moment the door shut behind us, the muffled buzz of horrified relatives faded, leaving only the sharp, uneven rhythm of his breathing. He turned on me, eyes wild. "What the hell is going on, Celine?" I leaned against the wall calmly, folding my hands in front of me. "You asked for a conversation. So talk." His voice cracked with disbelief. You acquired Alder Digital. That's impossible. You run a 5-person firm out of a co-working space." I tilted my head. "Is that what you think Paragon Strategies is?" "That's what everyone thinks," he shot back. "You never corrected us." "Jared," I said gently, You never asked anything worth correcting. He blinked hard, confusion giving way to something uglier, hurt mixed with pride. Why didn't you tell me? He demanded. Why didn't you tell any of us? Were you hiding it? Were you trying to embarrass me? He sighed. He still didn't get it. Not everything revolves around you. His jaw clenched. You don't get to say that. I've worked for Alder for 8 years. I built a reputation. I earned my promotion. And now, what? You just swoop in and take everything. I didn't take anything, I said, voice cool. I bought a company because it was a strategic fit. Your presence there was incidental. He flinched like I'd struck him. So this was never about revenge, he whispered. This wasn't personal. No, I said simply. But your reaction is making it tempting. For a moment, he paced the hallway like an animal caught in a trap, running a hand through his hair. Everyone out there thinks I'm a joke now. They think I'm incompetent. They think the truth, I interrupted. That you assumed everyone else's life was small because it made your own feel bigger. He froze. I stepped forward. Do you want the truth, Jared? The real truth. He swallowed hard. Yes. Paragon Strategies doesn't have 5 employees, I said. It has 67. Across 4 continents. We manage over $12 billion in assets. The Alder acquisition was our 18th deal in the last 3 years. His lips parted. No sound came out. I was never running a small firm, I continued. I just didn't need your validation. Or your approval. Or your assumptions. But you missed Thanksgiving last year, Jared stammered. Everyone said you were struggling financially. They said you couldn't afford travel. I was in Singapore, I said sharply. Acquiring Turner Industrial Systems. He stared at me like I'd spoken another language. You mocked me for missing Christmas brunch, I added. Remember. Said I probably spent the day fixing someone's broken website. Jared whispered, horrified. Where were you really? In London, I said. Negotiating a $2.8 billion merger. He sat down abruptly on a hallway bench, burying his face in his hands. My God, he murmured. I thought you were failing. You thought I was failing, I corrected, because you needed me to be. His hands dropped to his lap, defeated. So what happens now? To me. To my promotion. There it was, the real fear. Not the family. Not the humiliation. His throne was slipping. Your role, I said gently, is part of a larger conversation. And you're not going to like my options. His head snapped up. What options? I reached into my bag and pulled out a navy folder. Already prepared. Already finalized. Option 1, I said calmly. A lateral relocation to Minneapolis. Same salary. Same seniority. No promotion. And option 2, he croaked. You resign, I said softly. With a 3-month severance. His face drained of color. Celine, you're destroying my life. I met his eyes evenly. No, I'm giving you a choice. Real leadership requires humility, accountability, and awareness. You've had none of those. He opened his mouth but no words came out. You have until New Year's Eve, I said, rising. Then the decision is final. But when I walked back into the gala, where the Preston Wyatts waited with wide eyes and rewritten memories, the real reckoning wasn't Jared. It was facing the family who only valued success once it became loud. When I stepped back into the ballroom, it felt like walking into a pressure chamber. The Preston Wyatts weren't a quiet family to begin with, but now the silence that greeted me was intense. Electric, uncomfortable, almost theatrical. Every head turned. Every conversation died. Every relative who had spent years humoring me with pitying smiles now stared as if I'd stepped off a private jet instead of a hallway bench. My mother was the first to approach, her expression wobbling between pride, confusion, and the lingering sting of embarrassment. Celine, she breathed, reaching for my hands. Sweetheart, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you share any of this? I took a small step back. Not hostile. It was clear. Would it have made any difference, I asked, if you believed it wasn't worthy the first time I tried to tell you? She blinked, startled. My father moved to her side. His brows knitted in a mixture of awe and guilt. We may have misread things, he admitted. But everything we did was out of concern. We thought. You thought I had failed, I finished. You thought I couldn't possibly be succeeding without telling you every detail like a teenager reporting to teachers. Aunt Marjorie stepped forward next, clutching her glittering shawl like a lifeline. Celine, dear, we're just trying to understand. You've built something incredible. We're shocked, of course, but also proud. I smiled faintly. Proud now. Her lips parted, but no defense came. Across the room, whispers rippled like wildfire. Did you hear what she said about Singapore? She bought the whole company, Alder Digital. How did we not know? Why didn't she tell us? Jared must be furious. My cousin Bianca, who'd spent the last 5 years posting motivational quotes about hustle culture from the safety of her parents' lake house, whispered loudly to her husband, I always knew Celine had potential. He didn't. And we both knew it. Meanwhile, at the bar, Jared had returned. Physically, at least. Emotionally, he looked hollow, the bravado drained from him like air from a punctured balloon. A few cousins circled him, asking questions, but he only shook his head mutely. The truth had landed, and he was still struggling to breathe through it. Michael Luo approached me again, this time with a gentle nod. We'll begin integration sessions first thing tomorrow. My team is ready whenever yours is. Perfect, I said. I'll have my department heads send over the revised timelines. My mother's jaw practically hit the floor. You have department heads, she whispered. I almost laughed. They were finally realizing Paragon wasn't a cute little firm, run from a rented desk. Aunt Lillian leaned in. Celine, darling, we'd love to learn more about what you do. Maybe you could come for tea next week. We could catch up. Explain everything. I met her eyes. You want the PR-friendly version now, I said softly. Not the real story. Of course not, she insisted. We want to support you. Where was that support when you all thought I was failing? Yes. Not angrily. Just honestly. She didn't answer. Behind her, a cluster of relatives began rehearsing their new lines, rewriting the past in real time. We always knew she was brilliant. I suspected she was up to something big. Celine was always the visionary of the family. Revisionist history at its finest. I walked to the coat stand, retrieving my wrap. I had no desire to stand there and watch them scramble to reposition themselves around a truth they never believed could belong to me. My father hurried over. But you're leaving. We haven't had a chance to talk. You must tell us about your team, your headquarters, your plans. I glanced at the antique clock on the wall. I have a 6 a.m. flight, I said. London. We're negotiating another acquisition. My mother blinked rapidly. But it's Christmas tomorrow. Yes, I said gently. And for the first time, you understand why I won't be here. She opened her mouth, then closed it. No argument could bridge the years of assumptions. Not tonight. I turned toward the door, ready to go. Behind me, a voice called out. Celine. Jared. He stood there, staring at me with red-rimmed eyes. Fear, resentment, and a kind of desperate hope flickering all at once. We're not done talking, he said quietly. I met his gaze. No, I replied. We're not. Because the conversation that unfolded later, the one where Jared demanded a second chance, and the family tried to salvage their pride, would redefine everything they thought they knew about power, loyalty, and what success really looks like. The party dimmed into background noise as I stepped outside onto the estate's wraparound veranda. Charleston's winter air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and the ocean somewhere beyond the trees. I needed a moment, just one, before the next wave of confrontation. But Jared followed. He closed the French doors gently behind him, as if afraid any sudden movement might shatter what little pride he had left. His face was drained of its usual polished arrogance, now replaced by something raw, something he'd never allowed the family to see. "Celine," he said, voice low. "Please. Don't leave yet." I turned to face him, pulling my wrap tighter around my shoulders. "I've said everything that needed to be said. You made your assumptions. I didn't correct them. That's all." "No," he said quickly, stepping closer. "It's not all. I need to understand." There it was. Not humility. Not remorse. Fear. "What do you want to understand?" asked. He exhaled shakily. "How long have you been planning this? Did you do this because of me? Because of how I treated you?" I shook my head. "I don't orbit your decisions, Jared. You just happened to be standing in front of a company that was already on my acquisition list." He ran a hand over his face, pacing the veranda. "You have to see how this looks. I spent years working toward this promotion. Years. And you just walk in and what?" I said softly. "Succeed quietly. Outgrow the box everyone tried to put me in." He looked away, jaw tightening. "You don't get it, Celine," he muttered. "This was supposed to be my moment. My family's faith in me. Their pride. Their legacy. And now, your legacy isn't gone," I interrupted. "It was just built on assumptions instead of awareness." He let out a bitter laugh. "You're enjoying this." I stepped closer. "No, I'm not. Do you think I wanted this to unfold in front of the entire family? Do you think I enjoy watching you fall apart? You don't." But the truth came out. Not because I wanted revenge, but because it was time. He swallowed hard. "What happens to me now? Without the promotion? Without the division head role? You said you're evaluating me. I already know that's not good." I sighed, leaning against the railing. "You're talented, Jared," I admitted. "But you confuse confidence with competence. You don't listen. You bulldoze. You assume hierarchy makes you untouchable. And you're going to punish me for that?" "No," I said. "I'm going to hold you accountable for it." He looked at me, then really looked. Not with superiority. Not with competition. But with fear. "Celine. Can't lose this job. My condo, my lifestyle, everything I plan depends on it. I'm not firing you," I said. "I'm giving you choices. And a chance to rebuild with humility." He stared at me for a long time, the weight of consequences finally sinking in. A gust of December wind swept across the veranda, rustling the holiday garlands along the railing. Felt like the universe punctuating our conversation. At last, he whispered, "Why didn't you tell me you were doing all this? Why didn't you trust me?" I paused, the truth sitting heavy on my tongue. "Because, Jared," I said softly, "I told you pieces over the years. You just laughed, or compared, or dismissed. You never listened. Not unless it elevated you." He flinched. "And now," I continued, "you're finally hearing me because you're scared. Not because you respect me. That's not trust. And it's not family." He took a shaky breath. "I want to fix it." "Then start by listening," I said. "Not debating. Not performing. Listening." For a moment he nodded. Small step. But possibly the first real one he'd taken in years. The French doors opened. Behind us. My mother stood there awkwardly, eyes darting between us. "Celine," she said quietly. "Everyone is asking if you'll come back inside. Just for a moment." I met Jared's eyes. "You ready for that?" asked him. He straightened, swallowing hard. "Yeah. Let's go." We walked inside together. Not as equals, not as adversaries, but as two people standing at the beginning of a reckoning neither could avoid. But what happened next, the impossible apologies, the shifting loyalties, and the final move I made that rewrote the Preston family hierarchy forever, was the moment everything truly changed. When Jared and I walked back into the ballroom, the energy shifted instantly. Conversations sharpened, posture straightened, and every eye subtly trailed after us. The Preston Wyatt family looked like a room full of people suddenly realizing they'd been reading the wrong script for years. My mother stepped forward first, hands clasped like she was approaching royalty. "Celine, sweetheart. Perhaps we could all sit down. As a family. We just want to talk." I could hear the desperation beneath the gentleness. Now they wanted to talk. Before I could answer, Michael Luo approached with a respectful nod. "Miss Vale, I'll leave for the night. I look forward to tomorrow's integration session." My mother's eyes widened again at the way he addressed me. "Of course, Michael," I said. "Safe travels." He departed, and the room buzzed anew as if they couldn't decide whether to be impressed or intimidated. Aunt Marjorie ushered us toward the sitting area, where a semicircle of relatives had formed, almost like an intervention, except they weren't confronting me. They were confronting themselves. My father cleared his throat. "Celine, we owe you an apology." I almost didn't hear him correctly. He continued, his voice trembling slightly. "We misjudged you. We judged everything by the loudest accomplishments. Jared's internships, his promotions, the things we understood." Aunt Lillian nodded vigorously. "We thought you were struggling because you were quiet. We were wrong." "Yes," another uncle said. "Terribly wrong." 4 years I'd waited for this. For one of them to see me, even briefly. But now that it was happening, it didn't feel triumphant. Felt overdue. "Thank you," I said softly. "But you should understand something." They straightened, prepared for whatever truth was coming. I didn't stay quiet because I lacked success. I stayed quiet because every time I tried to talk about my work, you laughed, dismissed it, or compared it to Jared. At some point, I realized you weren't interested in hearing. You were interested in ranking. The silence was thunderous. Jared looked down at his hands. My mother's voice cracked. "We want to change that, Celine. Truly. We know we've been unfair. But we're your family," Aunt Marjorie added weakly. "Family," I said carefully, "isn't defined by DNA. It's defined by presence, by listening, by respect. I'm willing to give you all another chance, but not if I'm expected to shrink myself to make you comfortable." A long pause followed. Then, to my genuine surprise, Jared spoke first. "She's right." The entire room twisted toward him. He swallowed hard. "You all lifted me up because you understood my ladder. Her ladder was different, so you pretended it wasn't real." My heart tightened. It was the first time he'd ever acknowledged our uneven treatment. "And Celine," he continued, turning to me. Sorry. For all of it. Jokes. The assumptions. The superiority. I talked big because I needed people to think I mattered. Meanwhile, you were out there actually doing something that mattered." His voice cracked. "And I treated you like nothing. You didn't deserve that." A hush fell so heavy it felt like gravity itself paused. I studied him, really studied him. For the first time in our lives, he wasn't performing. He wasn't trying to win. He was simply telling the truth. "Thank you," I said quietly. "That means more than you realize." Relief washed over his face, only to be interrupted by my father stepping forward. "There's one more thing," he said gently. "We want to understand your work now. Really understand it. Not for gossip. Not for bragging rights. For you. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a miracle. But it was a start." He nodded. "Then we'll have that conversation. In time." The tension in the room began to soften. People exhaled. Shoulders dropped. A cautious warmth drifted in. I gathered my wrap and clutch, turning toward the exit. "But not tonight. Have a flight. A London board meeting can't wait." My mother touched my arm lightly. "Will we see you after the holidays?" Smiled. "You'll see me," I said. "But not in the way you used to. The world's different now." I walked out of the estate, heels clicking softly on the marble, then on the stone steps, then onto the long path lit by gold lanterns. My phone buzzed, emails, congratulations, meeting requests. But one message stood out. From Paragon Strategies Board. Subject: Preston Dynamics. Acquisition approval granted. A slow, calm smile spread across my lips. My father's retirement company. His pride and joy. His legacy. Soon to be mine, not out of spite but to protect it, expand it, elevate it. Full circle moment. As I stepped into my town car, I whispered to myself, success isn't the revenge. Being unshakable is. And with that, I left the Preston Wyatt estate behind. Not smaller, not begging, not proving, but leading. Always leading.